Well,
Hello, hello.
that is our brand spanking new intro for
That's
history.
pretty cool. Although I'm quite sure there weren't quite helicopters like that in World War II, but I know we're
World
going
War
on
II.
to other things beyond World War II after this. So,
Oh yeah. What's
hey,
happening?
yeesh.
We got
uh,
CW and Spike down in the chat.
yep. Hello, guys.
It's
Hello,
good.
guys. You have to pardon me. I am still rapidly trying to finish a few things. There is a lot
Oh
to
yeah.
try and cover. Um, jeez. with all this craziness. I don't know why I thought I could get done with the way work has been. Um,
It's all good. It's all good.
so I think what we're going to need to do is to extend this out. We can cover most of Pearl Harbor today and the events that lead up to Pearl Harbor.
Oh sweet.
But
That's a big one.
yeah,
We,
I
we got
think
that.
yeah, I think we're going to have a little bit of an issue trying to cover the rest of the stuff because there's a lot, a lot, a
A lot
lot,
of
a
stuff
lot.
going on.
Yeah, there's
Oh
just
shit.
there's more than I can put together in a week or 2 week time frame, especially with work the way it is right now. And I will apologize. I do have a presentation for everybody today.
Ah
Um,
sweet.
yeah, so I'm not going to let you down that way. Sadly, it is not as um, pretty as
That's okay.
I had wanted everything to be. So the important thing is we'll have all of the info
He'll
in
pick a
there.
Rick.
So,
Oh shoot.
oh,
Nice.
Rick, Rick,
We
Rick,
got
Rick, Rick, Rick.
Doris, Crimson,
Doris,
Rick,
hello,
all
Doris.
hail
Hello, Crimson.
Pickle Rick,
Hey,
king of
CJ.
all donglongs. What's up,
Yep.
CJ? How's it
Hey,
going? What's up? Life just came in too.
life,
What's
beer, and the
happening?
whole dang truth. I like that one. That's cool.
Uh-huh. What's up with you,
Except
bud?
I think it ought to be the other way around. Beer, life, and the whole dang truth. Am I right? Hey, Ryan,
Beer
how you
life and the
doing?
whole dang truth. What's going on, Ryan? What's up, buddy?
So
Living the dream
I,
over here.
I am going to
Oh,
apologize for the in advance again for the PowerPoint. There may be some trigger pictures in there. There are some graphic photos of some of the battles and some of the
yeah.
damage to some of the ships. Um, around in and around Pearl Harbor. I tried to keep it as PG as I could, but folks, this is war, and there's only
Yeah.
so much you can do. So, um,
War is a touchy subject, and it's never pretty.
more work
War
and
is
no
never
beer.
pretty.
Um,
I
hold,
don't know
hold,
about that.
hold that thought for 1 second. Beer, you're right about the work and more work. There's no argument about that. This time of year for me, it is absolutely crazy. But damn it, there will be beer. So help me
What's
God.
up,
And
CW?
I think I've got some
There
in the
will be
fridge.
beer.
Yeah, I think I've got some in the fridge, and if I don't, I've got a couple of those cutesy little wine bottles I can hit on.
Wow.
So
Yeah, yeah.
it
We
might
got you
might
sometimes.
might make my version of just history just a little off center, but it'd be entertaining. So, and the whole dang truth, well, you got to get both sides in order for that. So there you go.
It's
Lordy,
history.
lordy, lordy.
Sadly, war is part of our history. And yes,
Yes,
seasonal
it
work's
is.
chaos. Hell yeah.
Seasonal work is very chaotic. So I will
What's
be
up, CW?
okay. I will be okay and in my right mind beginning in October. Now, here's a cool thing. Next week, I'm taking 5 days off. I'm not taking the whole week off. We got a holiday down here.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
next week, for the events leading up to the fall of Berlin and the Nazis in the Atlantic.
Nice.
Um, I will be good and prepared with that. I expect we will have something pretty cool for that. Even though I think
Oh,
that's going to be
awesome.
a joint quarterback between Scott and myself because
Hmm.
there's a lot more to the European theater
Yeah.
that I want to make sure that the British get their full due, their whole due, and nothing
He gets a say
less.
in for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's up, G? How you
So
doing, G?
and we also have a lot of people to include in
Uh huh.
that. There's the Czechoslovakian resistance, the French resistance, there's the Australians, there's the participation of, believe it or not, the Swiss, the Finns.
Oh wow.
There's a whole lot that was going on there, not just the U.S. and Berlin or Berlin, excuse me, Britain. Sorry.
Britain.
Yeah, Scott will shoot me on
Oops.
that one later.
Oh yeah.
But there's a lot more. You've got the Russians that factored in on that, and there's a whole lot of moving pieces for that one. So we're gonna need to do that, and I'm hoping that over the weekend I'll also get a chance to start in on the big one, because by God, if it kills me, I will present you guys with an amazing 2-hour show for the
Manhattan Project.
Manhattan Project. Yeah,
Oh yeah. I'm looking forward to that. It's gonna be good.
got a lot to put in and put together for that. And there's a
What's up, Frostbite?
lot of
Good, buddy.
eye-opening stuff for y'all to see.
That's
With
awesome.
that, yeah, yipper. So let me do one thing, y'all, since we're doing the shameless promotion.
We are
here.
having a fantastic Sunday. Amanda's feeling a little better. I wasn't around much last night, guys. I don't know. Amanda got a booster, and it made her really, really sick. So, but she's up and moving around today, so that's good. But yeah, we're having a better Sunday than we did Saturday.
This is good. This is good. So, yeah, and you missed some some interesting talks about the bacon Brussels.
Yeah, I had to rewatch that last night. I had to rewatch it. I put it on the TV while she was laying there.
There you go. A little shameless self-promotion there. So
My grandfather was a rear admiral in the U.S. Navy search throughout World War II in his early career. The deeper history you're mentioning is beyond real. It's almost scary how much is lost in the books. Absolutely life. And we are at the end of this. We're gonna have people that have a relative, or if we can find relatives that want to be on. We're gonna try and get some what do you call it, like true life stories of what happened at
veterans.
the end.
Yeah, veterans.
Veterans. We'd love to have that, or we'd love to have you up and have your say life. You can speak on your relatives or stories you've heard.
Yep.
At the end.
And I am going to give you guys one little teaser.
Thank you, Rick.
As we go through this, I am going to focus on a ship that I found some other material on that I had not realized before, and it transcends. It goes after World War II. So we're gonna do some follow up on that and actually go into after World War II with this particular ship, because reading it really kind of just reached out and spoke to me.
Oh wow!
There's a phrase that we hear all the time that really is kind of cliche at this point, which is they don't make them like they used to. Well, when I saw this and I read this and I went, holy shit, I had one of those holy shit moments.
Wow.
I turned around and I stopped Misty, who is absolutely positively not into the whole war and military and all that. That's not her bag. But I got through it and she went, wow. So I kind of figured if it grabbed her like that and she has no interest in or intent, it was kind of one of those interesting moments. So
yeah.
Oh wow.
Hey, Colette. Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome, Colette.
And you're right. There's hey,
you
Colette.
are doing well.
It is amazing how some of the stuff is lost in the books, and that's why I guess kind of my inclination driven feeling, whatever you want to call it, is to
Yeah.
find some of the stuff that's not taught in school, in books, in everything else. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell you what, some of the shit that we talk about come time for the Manhattan Project is really gonna freak you out. And yeah, we'll let that go for now. Um, but the ship is not, it's not the Missouri, it's not the Enterprise. Um,
Bismarck.
it ain't the Arizona. Now the Bismarck, we'll get into that one. That was I believe one of the Atlantic ships.
That was the
Uh,
German boat, wasn't it?
yeah, it was. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So,
I thought
but
so.
that is one that I will have some specifics on next week when we do the wrap
Okay.
up of the war in the Atlantic and in Europe.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sweet.
there's some very surprising things that went on that really were not talked about much on both sides. You know, the Atlantic and the Pacific. So that's kind of what I want to do is pop up stuff that, you know, most historians will go and look at, and they'll focus on the big stuff because that's where all the
Yeah.
most of the information is and everything else. I
Yeah.
like the little oddball stuff. What can I
Yeah.
say? That's just who I am and how I am. So, with that being said, do we want to wait on Scott and have him check
I
in
mean,
before I get started on
we
this?
can wait. We can wait a few more minutes if you
All right.
want.
All right. Well,
He
I
should
can
be here anytime.
I can babble away. So,
And
you know,
give him a few more minutes.
talking about World War II, you know, and the events that led up. We talked about the events last week that led up to the Nazis going crazy.
Yeah.
And really there's a lot of things that led up to what happened with the Japanese getting started on the other side, and really the time frame for it was excuse me, um, the Japanese got involved when, and wouldn't you believe I got rid of my son of a gun, I got rid of my timeline about it.
That's all
How
right.
about that?
That's all right.
So, all right. Well, we'll just kind of fudge around. Forgive me, I'm not going to have exact dates because I bombed out of those. But
Yeah.
the long and the short of it is, um, we actually kind of set up the whole thing with the Japanese. Now, before everybody rips my head off, there was a lot that came into play with that. The Japanese, when World War II started, and actually a little bit before World War II, um, invaded into China, and were really kind of nasty with how they were handling things in China. They were given notice at the United Nations or the League of Nations, they were going to be.
Oh. Oh.
Oh,
Oh.
do we have a Scott?
We have a friend.
How's it
Hey,
going?
Aha!
buddy. How's
Hello,
it going,
hello. So,
Scott? Uh,
yeah,
this
let me
is
just
doing a quick recap of what we did last week on the
yeah.
Cool.
So,
beginning
well, that and starting in on China or Japan and
in
China
China.
here. So basically, the long and the short of it is Japan invaded into China. They were censored by the League of Nations as things got worse, and they signed into and agreed to be part of the Axis powers with the Italians and the Germans. Where we screwed up was we created an embargo on them, and we stopped the flow of goods, including crude oil.
Yeah, you crippled
And
them, basically.
that's
Ah,
where
and that's what pissed Japan off.
we did
Yeah.
what we set out to do, which was to make a statement and to basically tell them, hey, you're going to be in trouble. What we didn't realize is that they were like, okay, you think so? Yeah, all right.
Well,
Well, we'll see about that.
our
Uh,
culture is very heavily based on respect.
It is. It is. It is.
It basically, they took it as a massive slap in the face. They saw it as they were the dynamic.
Yep.
They saw it as they'd been like a naughty kid, and America were acting like their parent, and that's ultimately what pissed them off, and that's why what happened.
Yeah. Initially, they had lined up and said that they thought their enemies would primarily be the Chinese, the U.S. The Chinese, the U.S. and the French.
Mm-hmm.
They later dropped the French out because they didn't think the French were going to be an issue. They added in on Russia, and also added Britain in as one that they thought that they were going to have a problem with. So as a result, we pushed them into a position where they had back in the corner, and that's what led them to make the choice that they did. So basically, when our embargo was imposed, Japan's oil stocks had about 53 million barrels, which wouldn't fill their need for quite 2 years. So they kind of had to figure out what to do. Either we do something or we fold as a nation, and well, that's where the fun started.
This is the thing as well. I mean, it's commonly cited that the kind of start of World War II, the trigger of World War II, was Germany invading Poland, and I don't think it is. I think it's China invading Japan. For me, that is what triggered World War II. That is what started all of this. Because once that had happened, it was basically the creation of the Axis, which means that they knew it was a safety net for Germany, if you like. It's like, okay, so they're serious. We've been a standoff at this point. How serious is everyone about doing this? Once you invade China, it was a case of, whilst they're doing this, you ain't looking at this one. So it was that. It's like, you can look at this one, you won't see us coming around the back, and that's why I think that's what started the war. China invading was the start of World War II.
And lo and behold, we didn't. We were ignorant and sat there and said, "No, we're safe. We're fine. We're away."
It's part of the reason why America's as wealthy as it is today. I mean, the beginnings, the 19th. I mean, because you'd gone through the Depression, so the 1930s and the early 1940s, before you were part of the war effort, were incredibly friggin' lucrative for America. I mean, they were. So it's, we finished paying off our debt to America in, I think, 2018.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Just recently.
It cost us a lot. So again, as much as the pitch didn't help us, like, there was a bill. It wasn't gratis.
They didn't do it for free, I guess.
So that's what Brexit was all about. It was a celebration of we're debt free.
We definitely got a receipt for the service.
I don't understand though. Japan's logic was the best course of action was to hit Pearl Harbor.
They didn't have
all this other shit was going on.
The best course of action was to fight back. What the thought process was exactly what we refuse to believe, which is to hit the U.S. Navy and to cripple the U.S. Navy at anchor in their own port.
There's a display of power,
and then basically it's an amazing display of power to start out with, and then the expectation was whatever remnants were left would be swept up by the rest of the Japanese fleet in the Pacific, as they came through, and then the Japanese would have free reign over the entire Pacific, and they could kind of move forward. Ultimately, they were looking at going beyond Pearl Harbor and Hawaii, and in towards California and Washington State and Alaska and all of that. So, but
Pearl Harbor is an incredibly obvious and viable target. If you're Japan,
exactly,
it is the most obvious target to go for. Hands down, it's got to be that one.
Yeah, Pearl Harbor.
That's how they're going to come back at you.
Pearl Harbor is to Japan as Midway is to us.
Mm-hmm.
Is basically what it was. So
it was out for the day. U.S. got lucky. Oh well.
Yeah, well, and actually, we'll get into that.
Christina.
Get into that. So, because it's kind of funny, there were other expectations and a few surprises on the whole thing. And as I said, I'm gonna focus on a ship that you wouldn't necessarily think of.
I mean,
As
Wow.
the attack on Pearl Harbor was incredibly effective for two reasons. One, I mean, it was a hell of a strike. And two, it achieved what it meant to achieve. Fear. Scared the shit out of a lot of people. You know, where at that point, it's like there is, I mean, and again, as much as, and this isn't a criticism of America, as much as this was this big shock, I can't believe we've been hit. It's like, we're in a world war. You can't think that at some point it's not going to come knocking on your doorstep. You know, it's going to turn up.
There were people, there were plenty of people who knew that it was just a combination of the isolationists in Congress and a number of people that were screwing around with that big damn river in Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, with the thing as well, and again, this isn't a criticism of what happened. I mean, they did tell you they were coming.
Mm-hmm.
That was they did inform, we are coming to do this, and that was chosen to be ignored. And again, there were parallels.
Exactly. The crypto team that said, you know, hey, this is. They even said, if it were, and this is I love the part that Dan Aykroyd played in the movie Pearl Harbor, because it's so accurate as to how they treated his group. You know, he's looking, he's trying to make sense out of everything, and you know, statement was, if it was my call, if it was me, I'd hit us at Pearl. That's what's going to hurt. That's what's going to hurt us the worst. And, you know, and there's, you know, they're like, okay, do you have any proof of that? And he's like, no. And they're like, find us proof. Find us proof, and we'll do something. You know. Again,
the way it's told now is that we were completely unprepared for it. How are you unprepared? Again, I mean, they're a threat. They're on your doorstep. If they're going to hit you, that's where they're going to hit you. That place should have been ready. Always
at battle stations,
ready to go. At a drop of a hat, you should have been waiting for it.
Scott. It's very simple. It's two things. We were arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot
we refused to believe. We refused to believe that they would go so far, and we would not be able to find them or pick up, you know, any kind of advance notice. So it was number one. It was arrogance. And number two, you know, much as I hate to say it, it was a bit of the ostrich with its head in the sand.
Yeah.
You know, and it hurt. It hurt.
Well, it's one of those things where it's kind of like, as we discussed last week, UK's prep for it. It didn't arrive on our shores until we started shooting at them, and we fired at Germany first before Germany started firing at us. But we knew it was coming. So it's like, we're not going to wait for you to do this shit. We know what you're up to. So, and US should have been in the same position. They knew that Japan were a threat and should have had eyes on them at all times and been ready to fight. Because if they were going to turn up, they're going to turn up. But a lot of countries got caught with their pants down. Yeah. Because
nobody thought, number one, nobody thought they could do something and that this could happen so fast after World War One. I mean, World War One was huge. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people died.
This is the thing as well with World War One. A lot of the reason why a lot of the countries, again, which we discussed last week in Europe, weren't ready for it is because the Industrial Revolution has happened at this point. So weaponry has changed, warfare has changed, strategy has changed, everything's changed. World War One's a weird one. It's considered the first modern war, but it's still very archaic at the same time. I mean, we had people fighting in World War One with swords.
Yeah,
we had guys still going into battle carrying swords in World War One.
Well, yeah, the Polish cavalry. Yeah, the Polish cavalry was exactly that. A bunch of guys riding on horses going up against the very first, you know, ever created tanks.
I mean, again, you think how wars used to happen. I mean, World War One still got air on it, but it used to be you'd meet on a battlefield. This is where we're going to fight. You line all your guys up. They line all their guys up, and that's how it was. And now it's changed. Now it's like, no. We fly hundreds of thousands of miles and bomb people where they are. Yep. We send people behind lines, and that had never happened before. So World War II was the first modern war. So a lot of people kind of still had the mentality that, well, no, we'll arrange to have a fight somewhere, and that's how this will work.
Yep.
And it's like,
no. Yeah, and they were still stuck. They were still stuck on what happened in World War One, which was the trench warfare.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and that was the thing. That was the big thing with World War One was the trench warfare.
Yeah,
You know,
it's you're over there, we're over here, no man's land in the middle, and we fight for this patch of land. That's what war was at that point. You can change the scenery, and it might not have been trenches, it might have been cliff faces, it might have been harbors, it might have been whatever it was. Ultimately, they all worked the same way.
Yep.
It was a very small area in the scheme of things, of one side here and one side here, and they fought over that land in the middle. Now all of a sudden, that land in the middle is the globe, and it doesn't matter where you are. That's what you're. It's they just weren't ready for it.
Your battle theater expanded exponentially. You know,
absolutely. And this is the first war that's in the air as well. World War One. I mean,
you didn't have planes in World War
One, but nothing of any real substance.
No.
Yeah, I mean the big thing coming out of World War One was Red Baron.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah,
biplanes and shit. And
they had the crank guns on the front.
Now all of a sudden we've got jets. You know, we've got humongous people carrier planes and bombers, and it had changed so drastically. But a lot of them just weren't ready for it. They were still living 50 years in the past, and that's what happened. And I think America had an air of that because, again, you got to think about, and it's not, if anybody's hearing it as a criticism, it's not. It's just how it happened. What were the guys at Pearl Harbor doing at that point? You know, there are periods in time where it would have been quite nice, you know, on military bases where, what are we really doing? You know, we're not really at war with anyone at the moment. You could go a 10, 15 year period without actually seeing the action. You're in Hawaii, you know, it's and then all of a sudden they're on your doorstep.
Damn.
And that's the whole thing. You know, 6:30, December 7th, everybody was waking up. It was a bright, sunny day. You know, you had
Christmas is coming.
You had all kinds of stuff going on different ships. Hell, you had some ships that were undergoing repairs in dry dock. Some ships that were being worked on while they were at port. You had some ships that were being decommissioned, so they didn't even have armament on them. For God's sakes, you know it.
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff going on.
Did they have that mentality, like they couldn't be touched? Was that part of it?
Yeah,
like
they did.
It wasn't going to, like Scott touched on it
nobody
earlier.
Expected it. You know, it was.
That's how Canadians feel now. Like,
because again,
we'll never see the war.
Warfare before, you couldn't, because there were no aircraft carriers or anything like that. So it's like you'd know someone was coming a month before they got there, because you're about to see their ships. Like, okay, these guys are turning up. We got 4 weeks to get ready for them. Now it's like they'll be there. They'll be there in 3 hours.
Yeah, Hawaii was. Hawaii was a cushy assignment. You know, it was.
Absolutely.
You wanted to go. Everybody wanted to go to Hawaii. You know,
but now it's scary.
Well,
like with the
it's real. That's the whole thing with modern warfare the way it is now. Let's be candid. There is nowhere on the planet.
Nope. That's what I like. Nope. With the evolution of long range missiles, you don't even need to be close. Like,
right?
Fuck. It's a scary thing.
Yep.
Anyways,
and actually, Doris, if I may,
a bull.
Doris, I no, it's more like slapping the bull on the nose and going, "Oh shit," and then going back. So, but with that, if you guys are ready, I'll launch into this thing. It's like I said, it's not as pretty as it was. And Scott, all we're really going to hit today is primarily mostly stuff on Pearl Harbor. We'll touch on a little bit of the Pacific, but I think we got to add another week in there to cover all the battles of the Pacific. There's just
tell me they took a break from the Olympics this time.
Yeah. We're not going. Yeah, there's no Olympics in this. No. We'll do Olympics. Yeah, we'll do Olympics next week. Yeah, so we'll do Olympics next week.
Fucking Germany's at war. No, let's cover the Olympics. Fuck that. Anyways,
I think that's funny. How that tickles you like that.
I don't know why. That blew my mind. I was like, really? Shit. Didn't Russia try to pull that shit this year or something? Everybody pulled out of the Russian Olympics.
Hard to say.
I don't know.
I wasn't paying attention, so
I have no idea.
All right, so here we go. America goes to war. The sleeping giant awakens. So, events in Japan leading up to Pearl Harbor, 1930, London Naval Treaty is signed. The first thing they did was they invaded and occupied Manchuria, which is part of what I was talking about before Scott got here. They renamed Manchuria to Manchukuo, and installed puppet regimes led by the last emperor. The 1932, the Japanese prime minister was assassinated by ultranationalists. Military holds an increasing influence in the country, which starts to set in motion the mindset of where we jumped into when I go talking about the the embargo. 1933, Japan withdraws from the League of Nations after being condemned by the international community regarding their occupation of Manchuria and the establishment of Truco. 1930. I'm probably saying that wrong, but 1936, November 25th, Japan signs the Anti-Cantina Pact with Nazi Germany. It concludes a similar agreement with Italy in 1937. On July 7th, 1937, Marco Polo Bridge incident in China initiates the invasion of mainland China. The Battle of Shanghai occurs from mid-August through November, followed by the occupation of Beijing and the then capital city, Nanjing. December 13th, 1937, Nanjing is occupied. Height of mass violence lasts until February 1938. Nanjing remains an occupied city throughout World War II in China. 1939, of course, this is when we had the outbreak of World War II in Europe. With the fall of France to Nazi Germany in 1940, Japan moves to occupy French Indochina. 1940, the Axis alliance between Rome, Berlin, and Tokyo is formed. Whoa!
Oop.
So, and then of course we talk about the embargo that we set up, and that's
Okay.
what set the things in motion for November 26, 1941, is when the Japanese fleet launches its mission to attack the U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor. There were 6 Japanese aircraft carriers and over a dozen other support ships that made up the fleet that attacked Pearl Harbor. And because of World War I, the U.S. and most of the rest of the world has based their fleets on battleships as the centerpieces or the powerhouses of their fleets. Destroyers and aircraft carriers are considered as support ships. Now, notice here the what I had said earlier: 6 Japanese aircraft carriers and over a dozen other support ships made up the fleet that attacked Pearl Harbor. The Japanese actually flipped the aircraft carrier situation around before we did. We did based out of necessity, which I'll get to here in a little bit. But the Japanese centered their fleet that was going after Pearl Harbor based on the carriers because they knew they were going to need the planes to go in and bomb and do the heavy work on it. So, which leads us up to December 7th, 1941, the date which will live in infamy. Everybody has seen any kind of a movie that deals with Pearl Harbor has heard that statement made. It's been recorded, played, oh, God, who knows how many times, over and over. This is a diagram of what Battleship Row looked like before the attack. You got the Nevada way out front. You got the Arizona, and notice this smaller ship next to it is the Vestal. That ship was actually working on repairing some damage to the Arizona. Behind that, you've got the battleships, the Tennessee and the West Virginia, and behind that, the battleships, the Oklahoma and the Maryland. You have the Neosho and the California way back in the back here. Now, there's a few other ones that we'll talk about that were in different places throughout the whole thing. The Pennsylvania, the Utah, and some of the other ones. There are just way too many ships here, as you can see, to cover all of this. But on December 7th, 1941, 7:56 a.m., the first wave of over 180 Japanese planes make the first strike on Pearl Harbor. There were 5 U.S. warships that were hit almost immediately. The first ship that was hit was at 8:10, a 1,800-pound bomb smashed through the deck of the battleship of the USS Arizona and landed in her forward ammunition magazine. Now, this had not only the rounds, the large rounds for the 14-inch guns, but it also had the powder packs that went in behind. If you've ever watched the movie Battleship, you've actually seen where they go to load these main turrets, and they put the shell in first, and then behind it they put 2 or 3 bags of powder, which is what actually propels the shell out. That was all in the same magazine, which blew the living hell out of the USS Arizona. And we'll start about some of the ships. The Arizona is the first ship that comes to mind when people talk about Pearl Harbor attack. There were multiple torpedo and bomb attacks on this Pennsylvania class battleship. She ultimately was sunk and now lies on the harbor floor. For anybody who hasn't seen or doesn't know, down here in the very bottom, this is a memorial that was done up to the Arizona. There were 1,177 crew members that went down with the Arizona, drowned and lost their lives. When the attack started and the hull was breached, the oil that had been loaded on for a trip to the mainland has started leaking out, and I believe it's still leaking out at this point, and they actually refer to it as the Black Tears of the Arizona. And you can see here in the second photo, this is where that first bomb actually hit, and the black book here is what was blown out of the main stack of the Arizona. People thought initially that the bomb had actually gone down inside the stack and into the engine room, and it had not. It was just the force of everything launched the smoke into the air. Now, remember I said this, when the explosion went off and blew the Arizona out, it actually formed a 10-foot tsunami wave in Pearl Harbor. Remember I said that because I'll show you where it comes into play here in a minute. One of the other ships that was hit was USS Oklahoma, and the Oklahoma was a Nevada class battleship. It got hit by 12 torpedoes. 9 of them hit and exploded. The other ones are not sure if they missed or if they were just duds. Keep in mind, this is still, torpedoes were still not perfected at this point. They were pretty sure, but they weren't perfect. Anyhow, these caused holes in the Oklahoma's hull. If you remember watching the movie Pearl Harbor, the Oklahoma is the one that flipped over, where you show all the sailors that are jumping off, and later they've got the jackhammers and everything where they're trying to cut through the bottom of the ship because they could hear people, banging away there. And there were actually some people that drowned, and they actually managed to cut in and get some of the people out, others out up here. There were 429 soldiers that lost their lives. The ship had been commissioned in 1916, and she, along with her ship, the Nevada, had been moored on Battleship Row instead of being coal-fired like the Arizona. Like the Arizona, the Oklahoma was oil-fired. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can see here where the Oklahoma was on December 7th is where it was. It managed to make its way down here before it basically went down. And again, actually, I'm sorry, this is the Arizona. My bad.
Are those actual photos, Jason, or are they artist rendition?
No, these are actual photos. I've
actual photos. Wow.
Places. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
And I wanted to ask: did they actually have kamikaze pilots like the Japanese would just fly their planes into the boats?
Oh yeah. Funny you should ask.
Was that a thing?
Yeah, it was a real thing.
That is crazy.
Let me skip down here to Where's the Missouri? As a matter of fact, you'll see here there's a kamikaze plane here that's headed in at the Missouri. See it there?
Wow.
Yep.
If you
Okay.
missed,
Yeah.
your instruction was to take the boat down. So if you
Yep.
fired torpedoes in that boat and it hadn't hit, you smashed the plane into the boat.
You were going suicidal. Oh shit.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, here's one that's a little near and dear to my heart, the WV. So, the U.S. West Virginia was commissioned in December of 1923. It had been nicknamed out of affection the WV. In 1940, she was brought to Hawaii along with the U.S. Pacific Fleet. She was outboard of the USS Tennessee when the attack took place, and most of the torpedo damage was faced by the outboard ships. So as a result, she got an ass whooping. 9 torpedoes hit her, while the Tennessee remained mostly unscathed. The torpedo net was cleared by just one Japanese midget submarine, and that means that the torpedo net that they had set up in the bay to stop these, they had one Japanese midget submarine get through, and that's important. I'll show you later where that factors in.
Wow.
Yep. Now, the USS California was launched in 1919. She was a flagship of the fleet, and from 1921 to 1941, she carried that title for 20 years. Remember what I said is the United States, along with many others, considered the battleships to be the flagships or the main center points of the fleets.
Yeah.
She was nicknamed the Alki Barge. USS California had been moored at the southernmost tip on Ford's Island, Battleship Row, on the morning of the attack on Pearl Harbor, which happened to be a really bad spot. But she while she got her butt kicked because she didn't have a ship next to her, she could fire all the way around and not have to worry about shooting anything next to her, any of the major superstructure of one of the other ships. So now the USS Nevada, and if you all guessed that this was going to be the one I was going to focus on, good choice. Being the lead ship of the Nevada class battleships, the USS Nevada, along with her sister ship, the USS Oklahoma, held a great position. It weighed around 27,500 tons and was launched a year prior to the USS Arizona as the first super dreadnought, making her the eldest of the battleships at Pearl Harbor. During World War I, she had fought in the Atlantic Fleet, and then in 1930 was moved to the Pacific Fleet. When the Pacific Fleet moved from California in 1940, she was stationed at Pearl Harbor. So just remember, she was in the Atlantic first, moved to Pacific, and then moved out to Pearl Harbor. We'll get back to her in a minute. I know you're going to have questions about the odd coloring on the bottom picture here. USS Maryland, as compared to the rest of the battleships, USS Maryland had not received an equal amount of attention at Pearl Harbor. It had the least amount of damage. Only 4 men were lost on it, but it didn't mean that it wasn't a target at the time. It was inactive, and her crew had been immensely helpful in evacuating the sailors who jumped on it from the Oklahoma. And also, after only 5 minutes of the attack, Maryland started firing back at the bombers. So this is one of the first ships that started to retaliate back. Just for some reason, they didn't target her as bad as the others. And the interesting thing is the USS Maryland was a battleship that was designed to sink other battleships. So it wasn't quite a juggernaut like the others. It was a little more maneuverable and was designed to pierce through the thicker hulls of enemy battleships. Now, this one's kind of interesting. The USS Was one of the ones you notice I pointed out was off at a different spot. On October 27, 1913, the USS Pennsylvania was laid down at the Newport News Shipbuilding and Dry Dock Company. She was dry docked at Pearl Harbor and scheduled to leave December 6th. However, her departure was delayed, and consequently, when the Japanese attacked the next day, she was among the first ships to counter with anti-aircraft fire. Even after the Japanese tried to destroy the dry dock's caisson, she faced minimal damage at the time of the attack. Now, what I've got over here is you can see the framework that's around where the Pennsylvania was. And if you look here, there's not much water that's here. When they say dry dock, they've got this big ship that comes in underneath it and literally lifts it up out of the water, and then these two cranes at the back end. You can't really see that one because that one's already been put down, but the cranes do all the lifting work back and forth, and the ship is remained in this position until it's been repaired and is ready to go back out to sea. So it's kind of like having a ship within a ship, if you will, or a ship within a superstructure that's a hell of a lot harder to sink and destroy. So they were doing a lot of firing back as well. The USS Tennessee, time of attack on Pearl Harbor, out of the USS vessels that were there, was the battleship that faced the most damage. Arizona blew itself up basically with the Tennessee took more damage from the bombers and from the torpedoes than any of the other ships. The Tennessee was one of those mighty vessels that had been perfectly present on the target of the Japanese bombers. During World War II, the Tennessee played a vital role in the victory of the United States Navy. However, it's not as popular or known as the USS Arizona. Now, what I'm also saying is while it took an ass whooping, they did salvage it and they did repair it, and the Tennessee did go on to fight in the Pacific and played some pivotal roles. We'll get into that a little bit later. Now, the USS Missouri was not at Pearl Harbor. I want to make that clear. The reason I put it in here is because while the Missouri was not part of Pearl Harbor, it played a huge role in the events that followed leading up to, and none the least of which is down here. That is the deck of the Missouri where the Japanese surrendered ultimately. So not to give anything away, but hey, we won. We as in the Allies. Sorry, Scott. Not
we won.
Yeah. So sorry. Spoiler alert: the Allies won.
They're lucky.
But say again. Oh, so that's why we've got the Missouri. But the Missouri was actually hit by a kamikaze plane and suffered some significant damage from that. They had to get repaired. In addition, we've got some destroyers. The USS Helm was launched May 27th, 1937 in the Norfolk Navy Yard. Rear Admiral James Meredith Helm's widow was the one who sponsored it. After 5 months, the Bagley-class battleship under Lieutenant Commander P.H. Talbot was commissioned into the U.S. Navy. The crew present at the helm had been successful in taking down 2 Japanese aircraft, or so it's believed. However, another important contribution at the time was the attack that they had on the Japanese midget submarine that made it into Pearl Harbor. So remember I told you about the midget submarine that got through? This is it down here. And if you look really closely, you'll see there's a sailor. And if you look how tall this is compared to what you've seen in the movies on how big a sub top is, you kind of realize this is not a big thing here that got through. The USS Utah is another one we have a memorial to. At the time of the attack, the USS Utah was not a full-fledged battleship. It was still a target for Japanese pilots. 64 men lost their lives on the USS Utah, and due to the fact that the Utah was militarized. Damn it, I can do that.
Demilitarized.
Demilitarized. Yeah, they've
That's a
taken
mouthful.
all. Well, if you look up here, they've got one of the it started taking all the turrets and all the armor and everything else off the ship. It was in the process of being decommissioned.
Okay.
The USS Utah was a pre-World War II ship, and it was meant to be demolished, but they decided not to do it. She was demilitarized. There we go, and transformed into a target ship. So, but this is what's left of the USS Utah and the memorial to that ship. Again, out in Hawaii. Now, the big failure of the Japanese was the U.S. aircraft carriers that were in the Pacific at that time were not in port. They were out on maneuvers with their support ships. So what you saw on that map could have been a lot
Oh, that's
worse.
so cool. There must be a football game because they just flew the Lancaster bomber over our head. That is crazy when we're talking about World War II.
There you go. Okay.
If that goes by again, I'm going to put the camera up to it. That was cool. Anyway, sorry about
There
that.
you go. Oh no worries. So the primary carriers that were a factor in the Pacific were the USS Enterprise, the Saratoga, the Lexington, Ranger, Hornet, Yorktown, Wasp, and the Essex were the primary eight against the Japanese fleets. Now, the aftermath. The total number of aircraft that were destroyed or damaged on the U.S. side was 350. All of the 8 battleships of the U.S. Pacific Fleet were either sunk or severely damaged. However, all of America's aircraft, as I mentioned, were out of the harbor. They've survived no problem. The Japanese, on the other hand, lost 29 aircraft and 5 midget submarines in the attack. 1 Japanese soldier was taken prisoner, and he was, by the way, the one that they pulled off of that midget submarine. Out of all the Japanese ships that participated in the attack on Pearl Harbor, only one, the Ushio, survived until the end of the war. It was surrendered to the U.S. at Yokosuka Naval Base when Admiral Yamamoto learned that his forces had not destroyed the U.S. aircraft carriers or completely destroyed the U.S. fleet. He feared that the United States, with its enormous industrial potential, would soon recover and fight back. And oh, hell yes, we did. Just to kind of sum it up, the Japanese strike force consisted of 353 aircraft launched from 4 carriers. It included 40 torpedo planes, 103 level bombers, 131 dive bombers, and 79 fighters. The attack also consisted of 2 heavy cruisers, 35 submarines, which the Japanese were kick-ass with the submarines. So you thought that the wolf packs in the Atlantic were bad. No, Japanese submarines were worse. 2 light cruisers, 9 oilers, which were basically refuelers, 2 battleships, and 11 destroyers. The attack killed 2,403 U.S. personnel, including 68 civilians, and destroyed or damaged over 19 U.S. Navy ships, including all 8 battleships, as I mentioned up here.
Wow.
So here's to give you an idea of the casualties. There were 2,008 naval soldiers, naval servicemen were killed. 218 Army personnel were killed. 109 Marines, 68 civilians. We had another 710 naval personnel wounded, another 364 Army personnel wounded. We had 69 Marines wounded, 35 civilians wounded. So it's a total of a lot of folks, over 3,500 folks affected. U.S. aircraft damaged. Navy lost 31. The Army Air Corps lost 128 that were damaged, and destroyed were 92 for the Navy and 77 for the Army Air Corps. And this will give you a breakdown of the ships that were damaged at Pearl Harbor. We only lost 2 battleships out of the whole thing, and all the butt kicking that they did. We only lost 2 out of the 8 battleships. The others were damaged and repaired. There was an auxiliary ship that was also destroyed. As you can see, we had a lot damaged. We had 6 more of the battleships damaged, 3 of the cruisers, 3 of the destroyers, and 4 of the auxiliary ships. So it was pretty brutal. Now, what I did not get a chance, and we're not going to get a chance to get into because it is way too much to cover, is these were the major battles that went on in the Pacific after World War II, or after Pearl Harbor. Sorry, starting with Pearl Harbor and then after. Iwo Jima is something everybody knows. You got Guadalcanal. Excuse me. Midway. And the Admiralty Islands campaign as well. Battle of Bismarck Sea, the Philippine Sea. There's way too much to try and cover with that. So
Nice.
yeah. Now, the interesting thing, as I said, the Nevada was the ship that I wanted to kind of focus on. It was commissioned in 1916 as a super dreadnought over in the Atlantic. And keep in mind that and Scott, I think you can speak to some of this too. The thought back at that time was the bigger, the thicker, the heavier duty the battleship, the bigger the ass kicking it could lay down, and that's what they focused on was big guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it did, but I think what happened with the Bismarck showed the flaw in that plan.
Yep.
Because the bigger, heavier the ship, the bigger, a heavier target is to hit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it
took a lot to take that down too, but that's
it did. I mean, it's the thing. It's it's a display of might. I mean, not only are they effective at what they do, but it's also a display of power because you see the size of those goddamn things.
Oh yeah,
they're like floating cities with just a shit ton of firepower attached to them. Yep. You can see why they go for what they go for, and also, I mean, it's a massive victory. You take one of those down, it's a big deal. You take one down.
Yeah.
So it's it's a massive part of it.
And those ships, the big guns they were sporting were 14-inch guns at that point. That was huge.
Wow.
On a ship. Yeah, that was huge on a ship. Now the interesting thing with the Arizona is and don't think weird here. Just kind of roll with it for a minute. At the start of the attack on Pearl Harbor, standing at attention on the fantail was the Nevada's crew content. Their band started playing the Star Spangled Banner. And while they were standing fast at ranks, they were interrupted by a strafing attack aimed at them by a Japanese rear gunner in one of those torpedo bombers as they passed overhead. They missed everybody. They didn't hit anything, but the band paused during the strafing and then started up again where they left off once the strafing was over. They paused again when a second torpedo bomber, went overhead, but there wasn't any strafing this time. They picked it back up and they played once more until the last note was played, at which time everybody scrambled for their battle stations. So it's a little weird, and kind of gives you an idea of the mentality that we had going on at the time, which was, what the hell?
Yeah, I mean, I get the sentiment of it, where it's like, we will finish the anthem, and it's like, but it'd probably be best to stop someone from killing all those people first. It's
well. Now,
we can sing it after.
Here's the funny thing: the Nevada was actually the first battleship to open fire on the enemy planes. And she was the only ship to shoot down an aircraft with its secondary surface battery at Pearl Harbor, which is the smaller guns, not the bigger guns.
Well, they're going to be more effective against those planes anyway. The smaller guns are going to be far more effective. I mean, naturally, the larger guns are going to take about one hit.
Yeah.
But a smaller gun is going to be a shitload more effective. I mean, it was Zeros, wasn't it, they used to attack Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.
Zero's a bitch, man. The Zero is a hell of a machine.
Yeah.
And again, you ain't taking one of them out with that big ass gun. By the time you got that thing into position, unless there's a bunch of them all clustered, you can space invader. You need something that can turn it far rapidly.
Yep.
Because I met a guy that worked on Zero years ago. I had a meeting with Honda, and I met a guy there, and we were talking about military planes came up. And he said he worked on military planes. Oh, yeah, what? And he was at Zero. And I was like, shit, because he was of that age. Yeah. He was a guy that he was high up at Honda, and he, in his younger days, had worked on the Zero. And I'm like, fucking hell. So
shit. That's cool.
Zero's a hell of a plane. I mean, again, I know it's hard to look at the weapons that hurt you, but I mean, when you do look at them objectively, the Zero is an impressive piece of kit. It really is.
Yep.
It's no Spitfire though. Spitfire is better.
It ain't a Spitfire, but
it's
or a Mustang or a Mustang.
Nice plane.
Yep, or Mustang. Now here's where the interesting part comes into play with the Nevada. The Nevada had come into port at Pearl on December 5th, and it had been running. Now, remember, it was way out at the end. There wasn't really a dock for it. So, in order for the battleships and any of the other ships to have power when they weren't docked and getting power directly from land, they actually had to run a boiler at that time. They had to run one of the engines. Now, that morning, the officer of the deck had realized that the same boiler had been running since the ship came into port on the 5th, and had ordered the second boiler to be lit, ostensibly to switch them, so get the first one cooled off, get it cleaned up and everything, while the second one's running. What was interesting was by 8 a.m., that second boiler, when this attack started up, that second boiler was at full steam. So when the attack started, the senior officer on deck realized that with two boilers up and running, the Nevada had enough power to move and to navigate. So he immediately ordered that they get underway and ask for help from a tug, because in port there you have to have a tug to help you maneuver around. These aren't exactly little boats that you can kind of heave around with it. So they dispatched, and remember the name, they dispatched a tugboat named the Hoga, not the Hogan.
What's up, Peter?
Named the Hoga. Now, as this was all happening, this is when the Arizona got hit and blew up. And remember, I showed you on the map, basically right next to the Nevada. And it starts leaking burning oil that's floating and drifting towards the Nevada. Now, remember I said that the when the Arizona blew up, it created a 10-foot tidal wave, tsunami wave. Well, one side of that wave washed up onto Ford Island, which was the center island that all these ships were around, and did damage like a tsunami would onto that island. But on the other part, it also helped get the Nevada underway and get it moving. So they excuse me, they get rolling, and then at about 10 minutes after 8, the Nevada got struck by a torpedo, and then at 8:13 it was hit by a bomb, because the Japanese realized that the Japanese realized that this ship was moving, which made it kind of a bigger target to them than everything else. So as the Nevada is moving down, the second wave comes in of Japanese attackers. At the same time, the other men on the other ships that are able to see the Nevada moving are sitting there screaming and whooping, and it was kind of a nice little boost of morale, if you will.
Yeah.
So for them to see us having something in motion fighting back.
Yeah.
Now the problem was that they at 8:55 when the second wave of planes came in, the dive bombers again decided that the moving target was the bigger one to do, especially given that it was headed for the main channel out of Pearl Harbor and began attacking the Nevada more heavily than they would have normally. Ultimate was that the Nevada started to sink, and realizing that it was sinking, rather than having it put into the channel and possibly block part of the channel, they ordered it grounded. So they grounded the ship, which kept it from moving, with help from the tug that was following them down the channel. So here's this little tug that
Oh
has
shit.
no arms, no armament, no nothing, and it's rolling right along with the Nevada, going, "We're there." Kind of think of a little fly, or a little mouse running beside a big, lion or something. So anyhow, the Hoga helps get the Nevada grounded, and then later they move it to another spot so that the back won't, the stern won't swing around and block part of the channel as the water's flowing. So later, after everything, in 1942, on February 2nd or 12th, they get it repaired and sent it back out. And then by April 22nd, she's back under her own power and back out to the fight in the Pacific. She had a lot of different parts to play in the following, battles in the Pacific before the surrender of the Japanese. But which we'll go into, next week or the week after, depending on what we do with this. But the interesting thing is the one where you saw color on it, where it was red.
Yeah.
The Nevada survived all the way through the end of World War II.
Oh wow.
And actually, in everything, it was moved back and forth 2 more times between the Atlantic and the Pacific fleet. So they kept moving this sucker all over the place. And here's the part that really kind of caught me. After the war, the Nevada was selected as a target ship for the atomic bomb tests at the Bikini Atoll. Now, this is after we dropped, the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Shit.
Then we decided to test and see what the hell the capabilities of these bombs were, and the other stuff. So we were a little backwards that way, but to identify her as a target for the first airborne shot, which they called Able, they painted her orange, which is what you saw in the photo there. So the airborne shot goes off. The Nevada survived it, believe it or not, and was still considered to be in operable condition, albeit, it's radioactive at this point.
Yeah.
So the second test that they did, which was an underwater detonator called Shot Baker, didn't sink the Nevada either.
Damn.
There was one observer. Now keep in mind, this was a dreadnought class battleship. Okay, they had one person that observed that the explosion actually lifted the whole ship. This is a battleship. Lifted the whole ship out of the water and dropped it back down in. Now, the ship is really radioactive at this point, but it's still only minimally damaged and very operational. 2 nukes, airborne and underneath, and the sucker's still going.
And it was still chugging along.
Yeah, they stored it until 1948 when it was towed near Oahu to be sunk as a target. So on July 26, 1948, they put a more powerful new explosive device aboard the Nevada and detonated it, and it didn't cause significant damage. So
Oh
that's
my
now
goodness.
2 nukes and a newer, bigger, stronger bomb that was done on it. So above it, below it, and in it, and they still couldn't sink it. So
Wow.
on July 31st, they're like, all right, wait a minute. They decided the Nevada was supposed to be sunk by naval gunfire from a modern battleship, the USS Iowa, which had 16-inch guns. Now remember, World War II, 14-inch. We've now graduated 2 inches bigger to 16-inch guns, and 3 light cruisers, each with 6-inch guns. They started out at
Shit.
15 miles out, couldn't sink it. They moved to 5 miles out, couldn't sink it. They then brought in destroyers
Holy smokes.
that fired hundreds of 5-inch projectiles into the Nevada, but when the smoke cleared, it was still floating.
Holy.
So finally,
Wow.
they got one of the newer torpedo bombers, an Avenger, to put a torpedo in the starboard side of the Nevada, amidships, and it did the trick. Slowly, the Nevada started listing start to the starboard, then it capsized and went down stern first, at about 2,600 fathoms water, about 165 miles southwest off of Pearl Harbor. So
Oh wow.
this is what I'm talking about when I say
What's
they
that,
don't make
Wolf?
them like they used to.
No.
That was the
That
hardiest son of a
sucker hung
bitch.
on, man.
I'd have loved to have seen that go 1-on-1 against the Bismarck. I think it would have won.
No kidding.
The
That's
cook
crazy.
was talking about that is true. There was a cook called Doris Miller on I think he was on
Oh,
the
shit.
Nevada that mounted one of the machine gun sort of turrets. Had no training for it, and he shot down. I want to say it's 3 or 4 of the Japanese planes. He did get the Navy Cross. He died though. That's the part never gets reported about. He died about 2 years later, serving on board another ship. Was killed during World War II.
Yep.
Wow.
He did get the Navy.
Oh wow. So that part of the movie was true. I guess they were pretty accurate with some
Yeah,
of it.
there were a lot of seamen, black, white, it didn't matter. Anybody at that point, anybody who could pick up a weapon and fire was doing it.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, anybody who could give blood or could help was either doing repair work, or rescue work.
Or rescue work.
So
the better movie, if you want to watch a good movie about Pearl Harbor, the better movie of the two. Pearl Harbor's okay, but it's got that nasty Hollywood thing where they feel they need to shoehorn in a love story.
Yeah,
you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, the story of Pearl Harbor is good enough for that, having to put in some bullshit love story tacked onto it. If you watch Tora Tora Tora, which is told from the Japanese perspective, it's a fucking great movie. It really is. That's because it just is as was. So it's not like we're just forcing a love story or some false narrative. It's just this is as it was, and it's a good movie. It's kind of like Titanic. The 97 Titanic's great and all, but it's got made up characters and stuff like that. If you watch Night to Remember, it's just about what happened. It's almost like watching a documentary, just a dramatized documentary. So there's nothing false in it. Just this is what happened, and the parallels are the same with Pearl Harbor and Tora Tora Tora. Tora 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 is just here are the events that happened that led up to it. This is where the attack happened. This is why it happened, and you kind of see the other side. So why they did what they did, and that those men believe they were doing something honorable. Whereas with Pearl Harbor, it's very Jerry Bruckheimer, isn't it? So it's a good movie when you get it. It's and the timeline's a bit hokey on it as well, because the thing that gets screwed up with this is I think there's a lot of people that believe that they did this and a week later you went and dropped the bomb on them, and it was like 4 years from Pearl Harbor being attacked to actually dropping the atom bomb. It was like 4 years.
Yep.
So there's a big gap between Pearl Harbor and the actual bomb being dropped.
Yep. And Tora Tora Tora, for those who don't know, is Japanese for attack, attack, attack.
Oh shit!
So, it was the code name to they'd achieved complete surprise, basically.
Yeah, they actually flew one high level bomber over first to take a look
Mhm.
and see what was going on, to see whether they were undetected. And the high level bomber radioed back and said, "Yeah, we're a bunch of idiots that are just sitting there." And that's when they gave
Yeah.
the word to attack. So
Is
Well,
that
this is
in
the thing as well.
English?
It's America were caught with their pants down for the simple reason that offense was mounted, but it was largely ineffective. I mean, it's not. And again, the movie Pearl Harbor will have you believe that loads of them would shot out the sky, and it's this bullshit. It just didn't happen. You basically had your fucking ass handed to you because you weren't expecting to get hit. So they came in, they did pretty much what they wanted. A few of them got taken out and left. And then there was a delay as well. The strangest thing is after Pearl Harbor, I know we declared war on Japan after Pearl Harbor before America did. It was about 9 or 10 hours. Yeah, it was about 9 or 10 hours after the attack that America declared war on Japan. We declared war on them within an hour.
The Japanese were supposed to declare war on us before they actually attacked so that they didn't violate their treaty. But things were off, timing wise, and they actually ended up sending the message an hour after the attack started. So the attack was already in play when they went, "Oh, by the way, war."
Yeah. This is the thing as well. Again, it's not to dampen what happened at Pearl Harbor. It was a terrible thing that happened. But I mean, let's face it. I know we're going to talk about this in a couple of weeks. The reaction to it was, I mean, you look at the casualties and the American reaction to Pearl Harbor versus the casualties of Pearl Harbor. There's no comparison. I mean, it was what the Hiroshima and the Nagasaki bombs took out nearly 250,000 people. Versus 2,400, which, whether we like it or not, viable targets at Pearl Harbor versus 250,000 civilians in a fishing village is it's quite a contrast, isn't it?
Yeah.
But this is the thing. I mean, Japan as well weren't expected. I mean, the weird thing about Pearl Harbor for me is it's hands down the most ineffective military campaign, and I think the history of military campaigns, because essentially attacking Pearl Harbor lost the Axis of the war. Immediate. That was it. Once they'd done that, that was the end of World War II. It just started the end game in motion, because even Churchill said, as soon as it happened, he's like, well, I knew we'd won. The second they attacked Pearl Harbor, I knew that the UK was going to be okay. I knew we weren't going to lose at that point. I knew that the Allies were going to win the war, because now the might of America are going to be involved in this. There's no way they can hang. So it was a bizarre thing to do. It was a very, again, the kind of, the Axis campaign was so fucking flawed, because we discussed about what Hitler was doing with his genocide when he was wasting his time and his efforts on that rather than actually taking over the world. And then Japan have just done the same thing. So rather than wait, it's like, okay, so at the moment, we've got one country left in Western Europe that have put up any kind of resistance. Once they've fallen, and we've got all of that, we can just pin America in. That would be the way to do this. But instead, put a sneak attack. And it's like, you haven't thought through, fellas. You did not think this through. So all Pearl Harbor did was it just brought about, it guaranteed them a loss. But it's the equivalent of your safety net.
Think about it the other way. If you go the other way, if the aircraft carriers had been in port and they had attacked everything and not just what was left in port, and had done more damage than what they did, then it could have very well been a much, much different story.
It could have. And I mean, again, there's an air of, I mean, the reason why the bomb was dropped as well is because, going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the stream with kind of outdated military planning campaign, they were expecting America to invade. That's what they thought was going to happen, that America would go and try to get through their waters and invade Japan. And the reason why you kind of did, but the reason why it wasn't an all-out assault on Japan is because America knew full well that the American casualties would be huge. Huge. If you'd have attempted that, to go en masse in boats and invade Japan, the American casualties would have been astronomical, because they were ready for you. It's like that's what they were waiting to happen. They weren't expecting the bomb. They were expecting a traditional campaign of, right, so what they're going to do is they're going to regroup, they're going to come over here, and they're going to, and you didn't.
Right.
Instead, there was quite the reaction.
Right.
So,
and not 100% in defense of, because I mean, long and short of it is we dropped not one but two bombs, but not in defense of that. But you were talking about the military targets versus non-military targets. Keep in mind that the Japanese leadership had already issued a decree, number one, about kamikaze pilots, because they were running short on kamikaze pilots. They were running short on military personnel, so they had actually issued a decree that every man, woman, and child able to wield a weapon was to fight the Allies.
It was also that, I mean, Hiroshima and Nagasaki were chosen as well because it wouldn't destroy Japan. Because you'd think the more obvious target would be Tokyo. You'd think if you're going to drop, you'd think Tokyo would be that's it, but you would wipe out Japan in doing that. That it would. I mean, I believe they're still radioactive now in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But I think it's low, but I believe it's still there now.
Yeah.
I think it was the way they were done. I mean, there was always going to be massive casualty, but it was done in a way where they were that coastline, they were that far out that you're not going to destroy the entire country, and it was a display of power, is what it was. And I mean, again, I know we're going to talk about this more in a couple of weeks, so I don't want to dwell on it too much. But again, as bad as it was that it killed as many people as it did, it is horrendous. The casualties and also what happened to them is horrendous. The only way you can possibly look at it is it saved the lives of millions.
Yeah,
literally millions. It stopped the genocide of the Jewish. It saved the lives of millions. It saved the civil liberties and the freedoms of millions. And yeah, it is horrendous, but that is the nature of war. But it stopped the war dead, is what those bombs did. That was it. Because at that point, Germany know full well, if they take over all of Europe and go for America is just going to stop dropping those things on them. And that's it. This is it. They've got it's the equivalent of going to the American Civil War with AK-47s. You'd win. That's it. This is my display of power, because you could just mow down an entire battlefield. By the time one guy's loaded a hammerlock musket, you've took out 500 guys. And this is what America have just done. They've just gone, this is it. So it's like, we've won at this point. You can't compete with this.
Yeah.
So it was horrendous, but it did ultimately stop the war. And that's the thing. This is why the Pearl Harbor campaign is so bizarre, because that's what it did. I mean, it just created such a reaction. It guaranteed them a loss, is what it did at this point. It was like, and as they said, we've just awoken a sleeping giant. Exactly. It was such a bizarre thing to do. But that's it. That's the history of it.
And I mean, to give you an idea of what we were facing, over with that, just kind of one thing was when we went into to hit Iwo Jima, the Nevada, since we're talking about the Nevada, found itself attacked by a almost 5-inch shore battery that opened fire that was undetected before, and it was undetected because it was buried. It was dug in. And when I say it was dug in, keep in mind the big guns on a battleship at this point were 14-inch rounds. Okay, to destroy this battery that shot 5 rounds into the side of the ship, and it only did minor damage, but to get rid of this battery, the Nevada fired 71 14-inch rounds at this thing. It was that dug in. So, when you're talking about, bunkers, the Japanese did take a little bit of advice from the Germans, and some of the bunkers that they had built up on these islands were just absolutely ridiculous to try and get to.
With regards to a ship that's not been mentioned, the Japanese sank, and this is the strange thing. I'm not a believer in any way, shape, or form, but what happened to the Indianapolis? I mean, if you ever wanted an example of karma, that's it. I mean, it's it's freaky what happened to that, and it's the worst thing possible could have happened to the men on board that boat that had just delivered the bomb.
Yeah, I think you and I are going to have a lot of fun talking about that during the Manhattan Project presentation. So,
yeah.
I would dearly love.
That's the thing. So, I mean,
I would dearly love if it could be done. I would dearly love to find the Indianapolis boy who's now a man, I'm sure, who did the history project to address what happened with the Indianapolis. And like you were saying, I don't want to give stuff away, but that's a hell of a story in and of itself.
If you ever needed a textbook example of, can you explain the concept of karma?
Yeah.
Yep. This. that's yeah. It's
wow.
it's weird. And again, I'm not a believer in anything like that, but I'm like, shit, there's got to be something there. It's a strange one, man.
Yeah.
Right? That's crazy, peeps.
I mean, again, as terrible as Pearl Harbor was for America, it's fantastic for England. I mean, this is the thing for the UK. We've been begging you at that point to join the war, and just went, nah. And we're like, please, no, please, no. And there's a conspiracy theory that we knew they were coming and didn't tell you because it would trigger your entry into the war. That's nonsense, because if we had that information, we could say to you, they're going to attack you. You're in the war regardless. You know, if you got the information coming, there was no need for us to not tell you. Because if we have the information to go, look, here is proof they're going to attack you, you're in, regardless, whether you get attacked or not, that battle's still going to take place.
Just tell me there's not a UK day or a celebration day on December 7th.
No, we don't. It's not that. But there was, I mean, this is the thing. It's like Churchill gave a speech literally immediately after it happened, where he said about, I knew, they asked him about it, he said, I knew, the moment it happened, I knew we were safe. That was his thing. He said, I knew at that point we were safe. He said, because Churchill wasn't convinced, as much as we will fight them on the beaches, he wasn't convinced that we weren't going to get overrun at some point, that our people were going to be fighting the streets. He that kept him awake at night, knowing that was going to happen. But the second Pearl Harbor was attacked, he knew that was never going to be the case. He was like, we will not fall. Now we can. Yeah. And that's it. They knew the second that happened, that was it. This is over. It might take a few more years to get there, but this is it. And he says, I don't know how. I didn't know how it was going to end at that point, but I knew that now it could only have one outcome, that the Axis could not compete. Yeah. Because again, at that point, I mean, it's like Italy backed out pretty quick after Pearl Harbor. Because again, they're not stupid. Once they sort of seen what had happened, it's like, you fuck now.
I think we made a mistake. I think we go back to making pizza.
I think we backed the wrong horse. It's exactly what happened. And a lot of again, you can see literally what Pearl Harbor did, and you can see that people that weren't necessarily in the Axis, but were sympathizers, if you will, because everyone who claims they're neutral, no one's neutral. There's no such thing as neutral. It's like Animal Farm. Everyone's created equal, but some more equal than others. Some are more neutral than others. You know what I mean? They're always going to fall one way or the other. So as much as you had countries going, no, we're neutral. Yeah, but if push comes to shove, you ain't that fucking neutral, are you? And there was a lot of that going on. Then all of a sudden, they're no longer neutral. They support the Allied powers. They're just not part of it, but they're not neutral. They're and there was a lot of that happening because they knew full well this has just changed everything. This has completely changed the game.
Yeah. Well, you look at Sweden, Denmark, Norway. They all tried to stay out of it. It's like picking your team for dodgeball at this point, right? So Germany have just been able to handpick the best kids. We got to go last, and we've got like the asthmatic kid, the fat kid. That's what we've got, and we're like, shit. Now it's like, oh, now look what we've got. We're now playing with an iron ball. It's like, right, okay, now shit's about to change. And, yeah. Good analogy. I like that.
It's the best way I can do it. I mean, because it's like Germany and literally just wading in. We're having this kid and this kid, and they've got this awesome team, and we're like, what have you got? Like, we ain't got shit. We got a bunch of old guys from World War I that'll back us up if we need it. But beyond that, no, we're kind of doomed. So now all of a sudden, we haven't just got a massive population of soldiers. We've also got machinery, equipment, a supply chain, and it's things just changed drastically.
And it
meant that we had to declare war on like 3 more countries, but it's like, might as well at this point.
Right?
And it was a relatively protected supply line too.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, we declared war on Germany, Japan, sorry, like an hour after Pearl Harbor, but we kind of had to at some point because we had British territories that Japan were invading. So Hong Kong and Shanghai, they were still under British rule at that point, and Japan were kind of in. And we're like,
well, didn't you guys also had a colony down in what is it, New Zealand, Australia?
Yeah. So they've gone for that as well. So like Indochina and places like that as well. They'd taken and that was so. Yeah, it was a case of shit. Now we got to declare war on Japan. So we have to.
You guys had already kicked the ass out of the Italians in.
Well, this is the thing. So. At this point, we couldn't declare war on. Well, I mean, declaring war on Japan wouldn't have made that much of a difference at this point. We weren't in no hurry to do it. It's like we're currently fighting half the world. We don't really want to throw another one into the mix. But once it was like, well, we know America are going to have to declare war on them, we're like, yeah, we'll declare war on Japan as well. So, yeah, it was weird times.
We linked arms and skipped down the yellow brick road together.
I mean, this is the bizarre thing. And again, this is, as I've said, whenever I've been in America and I've been at a bar and someone's drank too much and wants to start an altercation, I do get a lot of them. We jumped in to help you out, and I'm like, well, no, you didn't jump in to help us out. That's not what happened. You had to get bombed to shit before you jumped in. Right? This is the thing. This is the way it's told. I mean, Hollywood's part to blame for this. But again, it's not like, oh, you boys, no, you didn't jump in to help us out. You were perfectly happy to sit back. So it's
right?
Yeah, no, it wasn't. It wasn't that. And the other one is you'd be speaking German if it wasn't for us. Nah, I know British people. We speak British, but that's it. We'd still be struggling with it. 50 years later, we'd still just be talking slow and loud. We just honestly, we know our German oppressors, and we'd still just be shouting at them in English, going, "Can't hear you, mate. Can't hear. I don't understand you, mate."
I can so see that too.
I know. I've seen. I mean, I am British. I've seen British people abroad. I've seen how we don't learn other languages. We just say what we originally said in English, just slower and louder. Get it? That's what it was.
See, and I've never quite understood the French dislike us worse than they dislike you guys. But we try and learn French, you know.
Oh yeah, well that's again right. It's like I apologize to anybody French in here, but typically what happens if you learn French and you go on vacation in France and you speak French, they'll speak to you in English, and you go, that seems largely pointless. However, if you speak to them in English, they'll talk to you in French.
Yeah,
son of a bitch.
The Canadian French don't like anybody. The Canadian French people don't like anybody. If you don't speak French, they look at you funny.
The French don't like the British. The British don't like the French. We never we're never going to get along. It's just the way it is. I mean, it's I don't know. It's strange. There's too much history there that we're never going to get along. I mean, a lot of Europe don't particularly like the British. I mean, they do largely forget World War II. They're like, you're welcome, but you go ahead and hate on us. It's cool. That's fine.
See, perfect solution. Get rid of Camilla and replace her with somebody from France.
We're just largely detested by Europe. It is what it is, but I don't know. I mean, there are people that have got it worse. I mean, if you look at Belgium, Belgium have got France beneath them, Germany to the right of them. You'd never sell that apartment, would you? You know what I mean? It's like,
right?
It depends, comrade. What were you thinking when you put the building up?
I don't know. I don't. The French thing. I don't know. I don't get it. It's we're just not. We just don't get along, and we never will. I don't know why, but we don't. It's a strange thing, but.
The one and Susan explained this to me. I still don't get it. Although several people have backed it up. is Montreal has taken down all English written signs, and the only signs they have up there now are in French.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And in Quebec, no, in Ontario, the grade 1s to grade 8s have to learn French. They have to have a French class, but it's not the same in Quebec. They don't need to teach English in to their kids. Yeah, they don't. The Canadian French people don't like anybody. I know my wife's half Canadian French, so there you go.
I heard someone sum it up perfectly once when they said about the difference between us and the French. The French have got a town called Brest, and none of them find that funny.
Say that again. Sorry.
In France, this is the difference between us and them. The French have got a town called Brest, and none of them find that funny.
Got it. Okay.
Wow. That's awesome.
But it's like, I mean, France gave you the Statue of Liberty, so I mean, they're quite friendly with you. I mean, I never knew this as well. The Statue of Liberty is essentially the exact same structure as the Eiffel Tower. It's just the Eiffel Tower clad in, without the spire on top of it. So the actual internal structure is identical to the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, is it really?
Apparently so.
Well, I didn't know that.
It's just an Eiffel Tower clad in, and I never knew that. See, because for the longest time when I was a kid, before I'd visited America before I knew anything about it, I always thought the thing was fucking stone. I don't know why, but for the longest time, I thought the Statue of Liberty was like a statue. I thought it was like stone. I didn't realize it was metal until I was like, I think with school we learned about Eiffel, and we learned about their gift to America. And I'm like, oh shit, okay, that makes a lot more sense that thing's metal. But yeah, it's apparently it's the same one. It's just missing the spire. So you take the sort of top layer off of the Eiffel Tower. The actual internal structure of the Statue of Liberty is
Canadian.
Huh. That's wild. I've actually seen it. I've never been up in it, but I've seen it. You know,
it's always had scaffold and shit around it. Anytime I've been there, I've never got in it. I know you couldn't you? Was there a restaurant or some shit in there at some point?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Never been in there. Yeah, every single time I've ever been there, it's been surrounded by scaffold. You couldn't get anywhere near it. For the longest time, you couldn't even go on the island.
Wow.
Yeah. Huh. I don't know if it's open again. I mean, I would imagine it's got something to do with. I know in 1989 the Ghostbusters walked it across, and that must have done quite a lot of damage to it.
Right.
So that might be where the scaffold was there. But
yeah, but remember, she's a harbor chick. She's tough.
But yeah, so for the longest time, you couldn't even go on the island. But I've never got up close and personal with it. I'd like to, but it's it's also not as big as I thought it was going to be. I don't know why, but for some reason I thought that thing was going to be huge. But I mean, it's big. Don't get me wrong, but it's not.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. I mean, I've been up the Eiffel Tower. It is what it is.
How was that?
He said it is what it is.
It is what it is. I mean, it gives you a view of Paris, and the best way I can describe Paris is that in about 1920, someone got a really good deal on concrete and just ran with it. Paris is, again, I'm sorry if I upset anyone. It's just a personal opinion. Paris is a fucking dump. It's horrible, man. It's horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a capital city. Capital cities aren't nice. I've been to a lot of capital cities. Typically, they're not nice places. They're not.
Hey, Gemma.
I'm sure there's an exception to the rule, but like London's scenic. I certainly wouldn't call it pretty. Do you know what I mean? Because it's office buildings and shit like that, and there's high crime rates in capital cities. And Paris, it's grimy, man. Honestly, it's not the sort of place you want to walk at night, and it's it is what it is. There's beautiful areas of France, gorgeous areas of France. You go to the south of France, it's beautiful. The Riviera, gorgeous. And the countryside in France is really nice. But Paris, nah. This is the thing. Again, this is the funny thing with Hollywood for me. Every Hollywood film you'll ever watch, every hotel room has a view of the Eiffel Tower from the window. Doesn't matter where you stay, you can see the Eiffel Tower. Well, that's true of probably no hotel rooms in Paris. So obviously, there's probably like a dozen you can see that, but it's just not like it's not nice, man. It's just concrete buildings and traffic and dodgy subways. That's all it is, man.
It's kind of funny you
Wow.
describe you describe it that way. I've been to Rochester, New York,
Mhm.
and you see pictures of main streets and whatnot for Mardi Gras down in Louisiana,
Mm.
and Rochester had a whole lot of that done. Kind of like the fleur-de-lis, the artesian columns and the metalwork and everything.
Mm.
Problem is, they had it done out of iron,
Yeah.
and the city rusted.
Yeah.
So you talk about the fact that you've got somebody went crazy with concrete, over in Paris. They did the same thing in Rochester, except they did it with iron. And
Mm.
from
Oh
what I
boy.
understand, Rochester gets a lot of fog.
Yeah.
And as a place with a lot of fog, you wouldn't necessarily go out in London and make a lot of the fascia on buildings out of wrought iron in London because it's going to rust.
Well,
You know,
and this is I feel bad for Americans that are sold an ideal of
hi
what
Jeff, I said it before, but
some of
go
these places like romantic and beautiful, like Venice. Venice is one of those ones. Oh, Venice is beautiful, it's so romantic. Venice smells really bad, because it's a canal system, right? In essentially a rotten city. It stinks.
ahead.
If you've got like
Yeah.
a sewage runoff near you, that's essentially what Venice is. So the romantic idea of gondolas sailing down streets is beautiful, but you go there on a summer's day when that water's being churned up and the sun's hitting it right, and it stinks. It smells like sulfur, like rotten eggs. That's
Mm-hmm.
Venice. So you go there for your
That's
romantic break, and
Venice.
you're like, yeah, not so much.
Yeah, no. So let me go to somewhere in the Netherlands or
Yeah, yeah.
Danish,
Go
Swiss.
Switzerland.
Yeah.
Switzerland's beautiful. Go Switzerland.
Yep.
And that's it, absolutely.
Yep.
But it's I mean, I don't. So our relationship with Europe has been somewhat strained over over the years, more so since Brexit. But it is what it is. I mean, again, part of the reason why Brexit happened is because we do have generations that are still holding on to the hangover of World
Yeah.
War II.
Yep.
That's just the reality of it. So when you do suddenly have Germany making decisions for you, it puts the backs up of a generation that'd be like, I don't think so. And it is what it is. So we do have a very strained relationship with mainland Europe. But yeah, how quick they forget, man. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, you can
Right?
hate us, but shit would have gone very fucking differently, wouldn't it? If we hadn't done that. This as well. And I don't want to rag on the French, I really don't, but the last thing I'll say about it is you will never meet a Frenchman whose grandparents weren't in the resistance. Doesn't happen. Every single one you meet, my grandparents in the resistance, you're like, well, a lot of you are lying, because I know there was a resistance, but you all claim you were in the resistance. You'd think there would have been a lot more resistance rather than, hi,
Right?
yeah, no, come in. But yeah, all of them. No, my grandparents in the resistance, fucking were they? There's a lot of that.
Gotcha. It's funny you talk about the hanging on to feelings from World War II. In the companies that I've worked with and some of the stuff that I've dealt with, working with federal government, believe it or not, there are still Japanese companies that will not do business with American companies that do business with the federal government.
Mhm.
So there are
I
those. that,
can completely. Well, again, I mean, I know Jewish people that won't buy Mercedes, won't buy Hugo Boss, just won't do it. It's and I can completely understand.
Yeah.
Because it's there's a degree of I can forgive, but I can never forget, and there's a lot of that going on. And it's I mean, I personally I won't buy, I think I've mentioned this before, I won't buy anything by Hugo Boss ever. The aftershave, the nothing, won't do it, because, and you can go and see for yourself. You can go, they're quite open about it. You can go to Hugo Boss's website. Hugo Boss designed the Gestapo uniform. So that uniform, and a lot of their terror was created by image. So that's why they had the Nazis knew what they were. This is why they got skulls and shit on their uniform. They knew what they were doing. It wasn't like anyone was thinking, "Oh, we're the bad guys." You're wearing skulls on your uniform, fellas. It's normally a pretty good indication that you're the bad guy. Yeah. But that look, that leather trench coat, the image that Hugo Boss. Very open about it, and that's where they made their money. So, no, I don't particularly want to wear something designed by the guy that designed the Gestapo uniform. So I won't support them. I don't give them my money, and it's a personal choice, but that's the way it is. So we do hang on to these things, of course we do. And I mean, I've had it when we've been on business trips in Germany. I mean, again, you just don't talk about it. It's this thing where we just don't have these discussions. But sometimes somebody accidentally brings it up, because I've been on where someone was saying about the architecture, and they're like, it's really weird that you've got architecture here from like 200 years ago, but then there's all these new buildings over here. Why is that? How can we got all these new buildings? I'm going, shut the fuck up. And it's like, because we blew them up. So shut up. This is getting awkward now.
We blew them up. Shut the fuck up. Yeah.
We do. It's like you kind of go, don't look at, I mean, if you've ever seen Faulty Towers with the episode of Don't Mention the War, we've got that going on, and we typically don't talk about it. It's not something, we don't have those conversations. Where it's like,
on the discussion day.
And that's what we do. So you kind of get that where every now and you're like, okay, we don't talk about that. We just don't. And it's interesting because, I mean, again, being in the UK, I deal with Germany all the time, and I have done since I started my my professional career. And you just don't. There's things you just don't talk about. It's weird when it comes to sporting events and things like that, because Germany are like our rival in soccer, are kind of like our main. If it's England versus Germany, we just revert back to 1939. But it's strange, so we just don't discuss it. We typically do not discuss these things when there's Remembrance Days and things like that. We're all very respectful of each other, but we do have to move on. But it's wildly important that we don't ever forget everything that was done, why it was done, how it happened, and what the resolution was.
That's the whole thing. If we and we've been talking about that, if we erase, there are parts of our history that are not pleasant. There are parts of our history that we are not proud of, but if we erase that from memory, if we don't teach about it, if we don't talk about it, then by God, we'll do it over again, because we are idiots.
And this is the thing. It's finding that balance of forgetting it but not forgetting it, because it's this whole thing where it's bizarre that anybody of my generation would be sort of untrusting of Germany. Like, well, why? It didn't affect you. You weren't part of it. Anybody that was born there wasn't born during that time. They don't hold those sensibilities. The entire country is different. There's no more West Germany and East Germany. It's completely different to how it used to be. It's like you can't think of them as 1930 Germany. It doesn't work like that. So we do have to move on. But at the same time, we have to remember everything that happened. So it's a very strange... It's a very weird kind of balance that we get, and it's always there. It's always there. Whenever, as I said, as a European, it's always there. I mean, again, it's different for me than it is for America. I mean, America, you're going to see people from South America quite a lot in American places like that. But for me, it's not uncommon for me to hear 15, 16 different languages when I go into the town centre, where I hear Polish and German and Spanish and French and Belgian, and it's quite common.
See, this is funny. You can do that in Walmart now.
Right. That's what it is. I mean, this is
depending on where you are. You can go into Walmart. I go into the one in Leesburg, because it's on the way home from work. When Susan needs me to stop for something, and literally you can hear 5 or 6 different, accents, languages, what have you. And it's like, wow, okay.
But this is part of the way that I kind of get my kids to learn about these things, because it's hard to tell them, because you got to go, but not now, not anymore. It's this, you don't hate Germany anymore. That's, it's a weird finding that contrast.
Yep.
But we do it through films. So, I mean, we've got, there are certain British war movies that we watch religiously, like The Great Escape is one of them. The Great Escape is on TV every year. And we watch that religiously. I watch it with the kids to sort of show that this is what else was going on during the war. And it's the way we do things. But it's very strange. But I'm due to go to Germany. I don't know where. I'm terrible because I've got a week off work. I'm supposed to be going to Germany in a couple of weeks, and I am going to have a look around. And I do go looking for those things. I do go looking for the remnants of World War II. Yeah. because I want to see it. You know, I want to see some of the things that are there, and they don't shy away from it, but at the same time, they sure as shit don't celebrate it. You know, so it's
Well, it's just like here. You cannot throw a stone up here without hitting a Civil War site somewhere.
of course.
You know,
Right.
And this is, I mean, the best example I can give, and this is somewhat off the topic of World War II, but the one that I kind of find the strangest, and this is a beautiful example of don't forget, because it's clearly been forgotten and rewritten. The worst piece of history I think that's been rewritten is Salem in America, where if you go to Salem now and they've got the fucking statue of Belinda from Bewitched, and every store you can go in and you've got plenty of goth girls strutting around buying wands and shit like that. And hey, it's witch capital of the... So, yeah, but what actually happened there?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, what really happened? So rather than let's all embrace and we'll all walk around with our witch hats on, what actually happened in Salem? What actually happened was a bunch of innocent girls were slaughtered for no fucking reason. That's what happened there.
Oh,
Yeah.
Scott, that would be a good topic, buddy. That would
Do you know
be
what I'm
a good
saying?
topic.
This is
Salem
my
Witch,
thing.
yeah.
It's not as much as it's now. Girls go there on their kind of pilgrimage, and they all go there dressed in their outfits. And every single other store in there is you can buy a broom here, and you buy a wand here, and you can buy it. So, what did your town actually do though? Because you weren't kind of like the embracing of witchcraft. You burnt a load of fucking innocent girls at the stake for no goddamn reason, and now you're cashing in on it. And that is the difference between kind of remembering it and celebrating it. And it's like they should be hanging their fucking heads in Salem, not embracing this shit. There should be a statue of this is what we did, and we are deeply ashamed. Not we now sell plastic wands and shit.
No.
Yep, Chris.
Right? Let's celebrate it.
If you do a show on that, I'll almost bet you Misty will show up and she'll have something to say.
October 30th, we'll do the Salem witch hunt. the Salem stories.
All right.
The day before Halloween. It's a Sunday.
We did it here. We have witch finder generals in the UK. And we did the same thing here. We murdered innocent girls because they were witches. And I mean that's and again I know there's a whole subculture now of Wiccans and I'm a white witch and all this shit, and I'm like, okay, that's great, but let's not forget a bunch of girls that weren't were fucking killed for no reason. Okay, as much as we're going, but I think maybe one of them was.
Didn't you also have that happen with the Druids of Stonehenge?
Kind of. The one that we more than not, it was the girls that were killed over here as witches were ones that you look at it now and you hear why they were killed, and you go, okay, so she had Tourette's, and you go, so that's why you killed her. This girl over here had narcolepsy, and that's why you killed her. This girl over here clearly sounds like she was autistic. That's why you killed her. This one had, a deformity, and that's why you killed her. Yeah. And at the time, it was like witch, and that was it, and that was enough.
Anything that had to do with mental health, they were a witch.
So it is the one that pisses me off that Salem particularly are so. I mean, it's now a cash cow for them. So they're essentially cashing on the fact they slaughtered a bunch of innocent girls, and that has never sat well with me.
I can understand that.
No,
I can understand that.
If their history was that they provide a safe haven to witches, I'd get it, right? And I'd be like, fair enough, that makes sense. You know, if we were the first place to outlaw the murder of anybody, I'd get it. But it's not. You're famous for burning young girls at the stake for no fucking reason, and now you're cashing in on it, and that shit's not right.
Well,
yeah.
So that's, and again, it's slightly off topic, but it's at the same time it is, because it's the balance between remembering exactly what happened, why we celebrate something, why we don't celebrate something, why it's important to remember exactly what it was that happened, so we don't lose something in the context, and somebody doesn't become a hero that wasn't, and somebody isn't turned into a villain that wasn't, and that's why it's important that we know these things. But at the same time, if sensibilities change and we go, okay, so what he was originally revered for as a hero, we look at it now with our modern eyes, not so much. That needs to remain, but we need to adjust how we explain about them and how they're kind of revered, and that's the important part. Not erase it.
Yep. And bear with me 2 seconds. Gemma, 2 things. First, I would love to be part of your autism discussion. My son has
Awesome.
autism, and well, he just didn't know what to call it when I was younger. So
Yeah.
there's that. And secondly, you want to talk torture, and Scott, I bet we could do this up as another one. You want to talk torture? Let's talk the Spanish Inquisition.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shit. Yeah, that was
Dude,
bloody too.
we could really freak some people out talking about the Spanish Inquisition.
And of course, nobody would be expecting it.
Right? Let's throw some happy history in the middle there somewhere. The evolution of the Care Bears or something.
The Inquisition. Yeah, that's right. The Inquisition.
Fuck.
I've got. Do you know what? Right. But again, if we do the Halloween thing, I've got a fantastic story about a vampire in Scotland that really is light-hearted, but it is the most ridiculous but unbelievable, but completely true story of something that happened in the 1960s with a vampire in Scotland, and it's an amazing story. But that's light-hearted. That's cool. It's a funny one, a really funny one. But it sounds like bullshit, but it's 100% true, and it's funny as hell.
Oh, I think we could come up with all kinds of interesting tales.
Could do something for sure.
For October.
We should do a bunch in October because there's some great ones. I know. I know some really. There's one that links to World War II as well. Funnily enough, because again, this is something that we can talk about with Japan entering World War II.
You talking about the Nazi zombies?
I'm talking about the Gremlins.
No.
Oh, the Gremlins.
So this is another part of it as well. This is because again, it's not for me to say what is and isn't when it comes to what people choose to believe in, but I've read a lot of stories about kind of the Gremlins of World War II, and I know what it was. It was, in my opinion, it was a mass hysteria. Where there are other people that are like, no, it was Gremlins. I'm like, well, it wasn't. It was a mass hysteria that was causing it. But it's a fascinating story. So there's a lot of those that go on. And yeah, no, there's some great Halloween stories, just some fantastic ones, some very strange ones.
Oh yeah.
But a lot of again with kind of America, have a lot to do with. It was European folklore that got a spin in America and then turned into what it is now. So again, with the vampire I mentioned in the UK, also with witches as well. With the vampire that I mentioned in Scotland. Vampires were European kind of folklore for a long time, around about Romania and then obviously Transylvania. Mm-hmm. But the modern version of that comes from America. So the stake through the heart and things along those lines are all American inventions, and they come from a true story, which again is something we could discuss over Halloween.
Go ahead, blame Hollywood again.
Well, no, it wasn't Hollywood. I mean, this is kind of a lesser known story. That the first kind of known vampire that was known as kind of like this was a vampire was Mercy Brown, and she was an American, and it was all to do with consumption and the tomb that she was buried in. So they destroyed her heart because she hadn't decayed. So when they sort of went into this tomb and there's blood all over her mouth, that's from consumption. They thought she'd been rising from the dead and killing people. Because she's been in this tomb for months, yet hasn't decayed at all. But the tomb that she's in is kind of like minus 15 degrees. So they basically put her in a freezer.
Yeah.
So they thought she's coming back from dead and killing people. So she's got this pale skin. She's got blood around her mouth. So they destroyed her heart. So they used a wooden stake to destroy her heart to make sure she didn't come back. And therefore, Mercy Brown is regarded as the first American vampire.
That's cool. Yes, yeah. That's also going to be something that'll touch near and dear to Susan's heart. Because she loves vampire stuff.
And this is the thing, all of those things are based in something. So again, I mean, it's I'm one of those people, if I hear hoops, I think horses. I don't think unicorn. So it's kind of I look for the logic behind the story, and a lot of these there's a lot of those stories out there. Again, a lot of these linked to World War II as well, where you look at well, what actually happened here, and you can see where the story came from and how it turned into what it turned into.
Mm-hmm. Hey, ain't nothing like a little bit of good propaganda, dude.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, we got an expression in England: never let something as trivial as the truth get in the way of some good bollocks. You know.
All right, I like that. I'll go with that.
I'm down.
But yeah, that'll be good. That'll be good. I mean, again, it's I could all day long I could talk about
The
razor
Salem
blades
witch
and
hunts.
apples at Halloween night and things like that. I'm not,
Right?
Yeah, I'm not gonna talk
No,
about
I
that.
can.
The Salem witch hunt
I'll almost guarantee Misty will want to be a part of that.
and other Halloween stories, we'll call it, or
Yep.
other
That'd be
Halloween.
cool.
It'll be good.
We could do
I
it
love
for
Halloween.
October.
I'll even do a prize.
I'd be happy to.
If you, oh, there you go. We'll do a different like Halloween-ish topic every Sunday in October because we're wrapping up World War II in second week of December or September, right?
Yeah,
September middle or beginning.
That, yeah. October we'll do. Yeah,
so
we'll do spooky talks through Halloween. I'm up for that.
fuck, that's gonna be good.
And
that's gonna be real good.
I can tell you, Chris, our veteran thing didn't work out from our side. So I don't know if anybody else has managed to talk to any of their World War II veterans and see if they'd be willing to come up and talk about it on panel.
No, I've been away. I've been away, so I never got a chance to get anybody. Where are we going in World War II next week?
I think the end
next
of
week is
this,
back
right?
over into Atlanta, the Atlantic, with the end of the European side, the Nazis. So it'll be.
What do you want me to title it?
Normandy Beach.
Yeah, so basically D-Day on in to the end. If you think we can do it, in one
World War
sitting.
II, let's storm the beaches. That's what I'll title it.
I think we can.
Okay.
I think we can.
All right. So we'll start it out with D-Day and kind of go from there.
Cool.
Gemma said she could try and record her grandfather talking because he served.
Sure.
Well, I think if we're going to have a night like that, we're going to have mostly like people that have stories that they've heard from relatives that were there, which is still good.
That works too.
Yeah,
I think that's
absolutely.
So that would be awesome, Gemma. At the end of this, we're hosting like a veterans of World War II, and that would be awesome if you could do that. That'd be great. I think it'd be fantastic. I'm excited. October's looking good. The end of this is looking good. This is perfect.
Yeah, it'd be good.
And I can talk on the Halloween stuff. That's my jam. So
you better.
I'll be a little more knowledgeable with that.
I like weird stories. That's kind of my thing. I like ones that are kind of based in fact. That's kind of my thing. So it's as good as, I mean, we can all tell a fantastic story, but if you want to, this actually happened and this is why it happened. Those are the ones I kind of like the most.
I've got some that are based for around here. Yeah.
Gemma's a fellow Brit there, Scott. She's in the UK too.
Hi, Gemma.
She's a sweetheart. I'm seeing him this weekend, so I will send you to one. Oh, okay. She can get a recording from us for the show. Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, love that.
All right.
That would be awesome.
Well, let's storm the beaches next Sunday. Tune in for that, guys. And there's also a new start time for
all the way to Berlin.
Hell yeah. I'm doing a new start time for mental health and addictions on Friday, you guys. Instead of 8, it's going to be at 6 on Fridays. And then don't miss Country Comforts cookout there on Saturday. And then Sunday we're going to continue this talk.
Saturday will be something a little Italiano.
Right. So, how was your trip anyway, Scott? Did you guys have a good time?
It was really good. It was really good. We had a blast, man, but I need a week off to get over it.
Yeah. I need a week off to get over it. No shit.
It wasn't a relaxing vacation, right? It wasn't a vacation for me. It was a vacation for the kids. So, I mean,
for the kids.
I literally spent the whole week just non-stop, man, from like 7 in the morning till like 11 at night. We were doing something, but we had a lot of fun,
That's
man.
Awesome.
The kids got to
that quality time is where it's at though with the kids. It was awesome. It's worth it.
Spending time with the kids was totally worth it, and it was a lot of fun. But man, was it was non-stop, man. it was extreme. I came back and I started Googling vacations. I'm thinking I just need somewhere I can lie by a pool.
Right. See, now you need adult time.
That's why you do a little surgery before you go on vacation, so that you have the happy pills you can take with you.
This was man, it was so where we went, there were a lot of like shows and things like that. So it was like every hour another show was starting. So I'm like, man, So it was non-stop. We go to one show, then we got to travel to another one, and then the fairground opens. We'd have to go there, and then the swimming pool, and I'm like, fuck, it was a lot, but it was fun. We had a lot of fun.
Now, see, here's your challenge, Scott. Figure a way to siphon off just 10% of that energy and feed it back to the parents.
Yeah, I know, right? That's if you could bottle that,
Brother,
man, Jesus.
Right?
If you can figure that out,
I know.
You'll retire with more money.
The worst thing that happened on the last night we were there, my kid lost his phone and his wallet. Right. And we're like, well, where did you leave it? And he said, I don't know. So I'm thinking, I'm not going to have to backtrack our steps. And we've been everywhere today. Right. So I am running, and I ain't built for speed, running around this entire resort. Everywhere we've been, I have to go through the arcade. I'm looking on top of the machines, under the machines, in the machines. I have to go to the fairground. I'm going around all these. I was exhausted, man. And then I get a phone call from the phone, and somebody at the place had found it. And I was like, fuck. So it was done. But I mean, again, yeah, my last night, I just spent sprinting, doing laps of this place, trying to find this phone. I'm like, this ain't a vacation, man. This is not a vacation.
All right. Come to the light, Carol Ann. Come to the light.
Shit.
Yeah. So yeah, I need a week off to get over my week off, man. Badly.
Oh shit. All right. Well, should we wrap for the week?
Yeah.
You guys probably got stuff to do. Guys, check out Building with the Boys and Country Comfort. Anybody tuning in, check them out, man. Thank my buddies.
We did last night. Last night was the bacon and Brussels sprouts that everybody's been asking about.
Do not miss that. Check that out if you didn't see it. Yep. I liked it. I had to watch it because Amanda was sick. I had to watch it after. But anyways.
Quick and easy way to get the kids to love veggies.
All right. Much love, guys. Much love, Scott.
Take care, buddy.
Yeah, next time.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jason. Thanks, buddy. Have a good we'll see you next Sunday.
That's
Bye.
Right. Bye.